morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we're talking about what game Saul wants to play in 2023 since he took over the list completely.
Oh, well, we could add something that you would like to play, of course. But my list is kind of extensive, but we shall start.
Go for it.
They're not in any particular order. Not like the first game I mentioned is the most that I want to play or the least I want to play. I didn't think about that. So they're not in any particular order. But the first one on my list, I have my list backwards. So the first one on my list is Blade Runner, the RPG by Free League. It's just recently been, they fulfilled their Kickstarter, so I'm sure it's now available in any
place.
Hobby store, yes. Hobby shop, game store. I forget what it's called. FLG, your favorite hobby or game store.
That was one of the big boxes that ended up coming to my house recently.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I ordered an extra book because I did get the limited edition hardcover one, and then they gave you the starter set, they gave you dice, they gave you a screen. Well, they didn't give you that's what I pledged for.
You bought it.
So it's pretty cool. I haven't delved too much into it. I am planning on running a game at DungeonCon in 2023. DungeonCon is Northern California.
I tried to do it away from the microphone. Did you see that?
I thought you were like Quasimodo for a second. So DungeonCon, it happens over Valentine's Day weekend. We like to say President's Day weekend. And it is a very popular convention that we go to. It is recovering from the COVID.
As am I.
Numbers, as is Jolene. We missed last week, and therefore we missed a week because Jolene got COVID, and she was down for 10 whole days, which really sucked.
But I have survived.
Yes. And so anyway, I'm going to run it there at that con. And before then, I'm sure I'll run it a couple times for...
Well, you better hurry up because you only got a month and a little bit of time.
Months.
You know?
Whatever. I like to see my pants. Anyway, it looks really neat. Free League is a company that really gets into what the RPG is about, like what their setting is, right? So when they did Alien, which I might mention later, it really did a good job of harnessing that feel of Alien. So in this case, this is basically more or less an investigative game. Of course, there's all kinds of morality plays come into it, or morality questions come into it. So it looks like a really interesting game. I really hope to have fun running it and hopefully playing it in it. That's why it's on my list. What do you think? What do you think of Blade Runner? I know. Well, for me, I love the movie. Right, I love Blade Runner the movie.
I never saw the movie.
You never?
I told you that already.
God, really?
I never saw the old movie or the new movie.
Oh, I have been. Whatever it is.
It's okay. I understand the concept because you've explained it to me ad nauseum.
You cannot understand if you haven't seen the movie. Oh my God. Okay, I have it. Do I have the movie? I don't know if I have the movie. But you're going to watch it.
If you have it, I'm going to hide it.
You're going to watch it.
I don't want to watch it.
You're going to watch it. Not maybe today, but in the suit.
I understand the concept. There's these clones, right? They're clones?
Yes. They like to be called artificial people. No, you're right. They're clones.
They're clones, but they don't know they're clones. Some know they're clones.
Most of them know they're clones.
Okay.
Most of them.
Well, you've told me about it, so I don't need to see the movie.
So she obviously hasn't seen the movie, but when I first saw it, my brother loved the movie. I remember hearing the soundtrack first.
Oh no, Felipe is going to make me watch this movie.
Yes, yeah. Anybody out there who has any kind of pull, make her watch the movie. But anyway, my brother had the soundtrack, and it was done by Vangelis, and it's this really ethereal type of music, and it just like, and they used it, of course they used it in the movie, and then when I saw the movie I was like, wow, it just blew me away in my teenage year that I saw it. Okay,
so the next one that you want to play is
Aliens. Now Aliens I've had for a while. I was a Kickstarter or pre-order guy on this one. I've run quite a few games of it at the cons and at private groups, and it's a fun game. I love running it. I love scaring the hell out of people, and then they actually scare the hell out of themselves because usually there's some person who works against the group's better.
There's a company man in there. And then everyone has their own agenda.
Agendas, yes. And so it's a really fun game. It uses the same, of course, it uses the Year Zero engine. And it's very, very evocative of Aliens, I think. They use this panic mechanic that they have added that is not normal to Year Zero engines. And it's just spot on. It makes it really click. There is an alternative game called Mothership that kind of does the same thing, but I have not played that one. So I'm sticking to Aliens. I'm going to try Mothership, hopefully, at the con. Somebody's going to run it probably. But I'm really hope to play more of Aliens.
Isn't it just Alien?
Alien, you're right. Alien.
Just making sure.
You are correct. The next is Twilight 2000. Oh my God, it's another Free League game. Now, Twilight 2000, 4th edition, it was remade or redone by Free League, and it uses a really weird version of their Year Zero engine. It's still
because it's a crunchy game, right? Even though it
was a hugely crunchy game back in the day,
and it'll still be crunchy.
And I think they wanted to please those old fogies. I don't know what else to call them. Those grognards that love that crunchiness and love being able to disseminate information about a certain kind of weapon to a certain extent, to ad nauseum, like you would say. And I never played that game. I own it. I've played the Dark Conspiracy, which used sort of the same rules, I think. Yeah, pretty much. But it was really steeped in that whole military RPG type of game where, you know, everything had stats.
I just want to interrupt you and say...
And by the way, it's a post-apocalyptic game.
I just want to interrupt you and say that I would like to play Dark Conspiracy to anybody out there who wants to run it for me.
Well, I think I could probably try that. Anyway, yeah, sure. Dark Conspiracy. Anyway, so Dark Conspiracy has not been remade. There has been talk about it, and there was there was a company that said they were going to republish it or reprint it or redo the rules. And they went on a sort of it was not a Kickstarter, but another, what do you call that, crowdfunding thing. And somehow everybody lost their money because I think the company that was doing it went bankrupt. And it was a German company, I believe, and then they got investigated. And it sucks, but it does happen. The sole reason I did not back that crowdfunder is because I had never heard of that crowdfunding platform. And not giving any bad light on that crowdfunding platform, I don't remember what it was, but it was a European one, and it wasn't Kickstarter, and it wasn't. There's another one called I forget what it's called, but it's a really popular one, not compared, but it's like second to Kickstarter. I forget what it's called. Anyway, so Twilight 2000, it's based on a heavily modified Year Zero engine. Instead of just 6-sided dice, you have 10s, 8s, and 6s. And I haven't really looked at the rules. I have been they gave you a lot of stuff in the Kickstarter. They gave me, when I Kickstarted, it was pretty cool. I just have not had time to delve into it too deeply. I've been running bunch of other games.
For a man who tells me that he doesn't buy Kickstarters or he isn't putting his money into any, you sure get a lot of Kickstarter stuff.
Well, some of them are pre-orders, so they don't count as Kickstarters.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, let's move it on. Oops, I just noticed that I have a lot of Free League, so let's switch gears away from Free League, even though I'm probably going to go back to it. Another game, I'm going to go way back in time. Not that far back in time, but Mutant Chronicles by Modiphius. Mutant Chronicles is a really cool setting. I've talked about it on a previous podcast about what it's about. It's 1980s diesel punk, they call it. I told you about the shoulder pads. They're really into shoulder pads. It kind of gets kind of funky that way, but I think the overall setting of this, of a kind of a decaying technological apocalyptic thing coming, is kind of cool, and it's neat. I really like it, and it uses a 2D system. It was I don't know if it was the first one, but it was pretty close to the first one.
But it's not a 2D6 system.
No, 2D20. I'm sorry, 2D20 system. The same system that's used by Conan and other games of that ilk. It has been basically what is it?
Does it have the pool where you get it at?
The momentum pool.
Okay.
It has all that. It's really neat. I really like that. Just like in Star Trek Adventures and stuff like that. And I really like it. I just really like the setting. So I'm giving I gave a book to Bay, and he didn't know it was a 2D20 system. I think he thought it was a Year Zero engine. And I haven't given the book to Morgan. Morgan, I got to get your address. I'm going to drive by your house. I'm going to fling that book at you, and then
don't fling the book.
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy book. Unfortunately, it's out of print because Modifius either lost the license or they gave up on it. And
you don't have to talk so fast.
They try to sell out their whole warehouse of it, and I got almost their whole collection at a huge discount. I was quite proud of myself.
Yeah. Okay.
Alrighty, so not to move too quickly, but let's move on. Out of the Ashes. Now, this is a smaller, independent type of
It's a
book.
post-apocalyptic, I can tell by the title.
Out of the Ashes. Yes, it's a fantasy post-apocalyptic.
Who makes it?
It was written by Paul Mitchner.
Oh, I think I've talked to him.
Yes, we had an interview with him when he did
Liminal?
Liminal, right. So Liminal, we talked to the author. We have an interview about him. He's out of, I forget what town he's at, but he's a math professor. So
very lovely man.
Very lovely man. And I think what's interesting is that because he's a math dude, he understands math. So it was, Liminal was a 2D6 system a la Traveler. I really like the system. He really breaks down the rules. Really simple. I love that book. It's
so Liminal is on your list. I think it's the next one you were going to talk about. So he wrote Liminal also.
Liminal first, yeah, and then he came out with Out of the Ashes.
And Liminal is a modern fantasy kind of.
Oh, you got urban fantasy,
urban,
centered in England, right?
Yeah,
centered in England because guy's English. I ran it, even though I'm not English and I've never been in England. But it was the case file they call the Adventures case files.
It was a lot of fun.
It was.
I
fun.
really enjoyed it.
And what's really cool is that because they're based on actual what is it?
What was really cool was that we could look stuff up on our phones while we were playing, and it was really interesting. Both of the groups I played with. Well, the first time we played with Morgan and Bay, and they were trying to figure out the mechanics because we had just gotten it, right? And that was a very interesting because you all look at everything, and they really look at the rules. Where Saul skims the rules, Bay and Morgan actually, read everything and
they do a deeper dive into rules than I do.
And then they go, okay, how would it work? This is what we did, but how was it supposed to be, right? And then
I was right. Anyway, yeah, and what I like about it is because it's based Liminal. We're talking about Liminal. It's based on the real places and real, what do you call them? Real mythos that people actually believe or actually heard as little kids as tales. So there was like the one was called the Ghost of some place. I forget what it's called. The Ghost.
It was a Scottish Highland place.
Yes, exactly. And actually, they used this, what do you call it? This myth about these ghosts in that area.
I'm not sure it was a myth, but
I forget to use the. I don't know.
They used the historical setting,
right? And because it's a real place and it has that background of there's ghosts in that region. People go, well, what kind of information can I get? And I go, well, you could just Google it. And they're like, what?
Which was amazing because then all of our it was the Friday night group. All the guys started Googling everything, and they just thought that was cool.
Yeah, exactly. And there was another one that had to do with the fake fairies that certain kids took pictures of in England, and it had to do with all that. It was very interesting, very well.
And some book that Felipe liked.
And yeah, it was. I forget. I don't remember the book, but there you go. But Out of the Ashes, it uses that same mechanic, sort of, but instead of D6s, it's D10s. And we discussed that idea of D10s and how it changes the curve and the what do you call it?
That's what I was just. I thought that we had discussed that.
And he lost me on that part, but it makes sense to people who love math.
I was just going to ask you what the difference between D6s and D10s
Don't ask me those kind of particulars. I really don't know. It's about flattening the curve. I don't know if that means anything to you. Or it widens it. I don't know.
Well,
I know more dice gives you like a flattener curve instead of the sharp. Like the D20, they say is terrible in probability because it's like there's just a die one, and there's nothing that mitigates anything. Where if you roll 2 dice, 2 6-sided dice, that gives you a little bit of a curve. If you roll 3 dice, it makes the curve, the bell curve, whatever, bigger or wider, and it gives you a better probability. You know, the probability is whatever.
Okay. That's right. Enough of you telling me stuff.
Anyway, so it just came out not too long ago. It was just published on a Kickstarter. You can find...
So Out of the Ashes, it's post-apocalyptic?
A post-apocalyptic fantasy. So basically, it's like Sauron was out there. I'm not using the right term, but the big bad guy was out there. He was causing havoc in the world, but the nations or the groups of people got together, defeated him, but the world is basically destroyed. And you're coming out of the ashes.
Got it.
Title. Like I said, it's a really neat system. It's really neat to. It's a small little book. It's almost the same size as, or practically the same size as Liminal, and Liminal has that little A10 digest size book, and it's pretty cool. So I want to get that out, and it has a quick start rules set, and so you can just buy the quick start or download it, and it has an adventure and characters in it. Bada bing, bada boom. You're set off. You're ready to go. Any questions?
I don't have any questions.
All right, so we're going to go to...
a totally different kind of game now.
Yes. Wrath and Glory. So Wrath and Glory is... I don't know the name of the company that came out with it. It is Warhammer 40K RPG. And before that was FFG, which Fantasy Flight Games RPG. They had 3 games. They had Oni War or something like that, which dealt with Space Marines. Dark Heresy, dealt with the Inquisitors and the guys that fly around in spaceships. I forget the name of that one. So there was 3 sets of books, kind of like they did with Star Wars. They had 3 sets of books that basically had the same rules inside of them. And then, so it's a Fantasy Flight lost the rights of the franchise or whatever. Excuse me. And then now you have this game called Wrath and Glory. They changed the rules. Fantasy Flight had a percentile system, and this is dice pools, D6 dice pools.
Is it D6 dice pools like Shadowrun?
Yeah, exactly. That's what's
the boys love those kind of D6 dice pools.
or like even you could go simpler with what is it? Tales from the Loop or Free League type. Anyway, so what it does is like in the percentile system, a lot of people love that type of system. BRP, basic role playing, which powers all kinds of Chaosium type games.
I like percentile systems, but I always have to ask Felipe, do I need to roll high or low? Because I can't always tell.
Most times I think you have to roll... Ooh.
See?
You have to roll under whatever you're trying to roll.
See?
Yes.
Sometimes it's hard to tell. Sometimes you have to roll over, right?
Very rarely, but there are some systems that you do have to roll over, but most of the time you roll under. Like you have a skill of 75, that means, or 75%, that means...
Does this game have charts? Is it a la space opera?
No. What that's why they made it into a dice pool system, because if you have percentile system, then you have to have... What happens if I'm shooting while I'm running? Well, that's like a minus 10%. What happens if I'm shooting out of a car? What happens if I'm stopping aiming?
So my eyes are glazing over. Yes, I know. There's a chart.
So instead of giving you a bunch of percentiles, like 15% for this, 10% for that, 5% for this, they just give you, give them a +1 die.
Yes, I had so they get an extra die for the die pool.
Maybe 2 dice, and then you take away a couple dice. So it makes it much easier to deal with instead of having all these percentile numbers have to be floating in your head, or you have to have a cheat sheet or on a game screen. Now have never ran, but I played Dark Heresy, and it's a really fun game. I like the idea. So if you like Warhammer 40K world, then you obviously would love either one of these rule sets, I think, because they're heavily steeped with the whole world or universe of 40K, right? Eternal Emperor that's been living for thousands of years, and everybody just goes and dies for the Emperor, blah, blah, blah. You have this eternal struggle with chaos, and it's just really this was good versus evil, but there's a lot of gray area in between. What they did in this book, what they didn't do in the previous Fantasy Flight games, is that all the rules are in this game, right? If you want to become a Space Marine, it's in this book. If you want to do an Inquisitor, like in Dark Heresy, it's in this book. If you want to do, let me go look at the rule book real quick.
Oh, jeez. The big long pause while Saul looks something up.
So instead of having the rules in 3 different books, it's all mushed into this one book, which is actually quite a good deal, right? And it's like a huge book. It's like over 300 something pages.
Did you buy this book too?
I bought it at the flea market, so it was only $5. Some guy was getting rid of it. I go, what happened? He goes, nobody in my group wants to play it. I'll take it for $5. This is a $50 book. Sucker. So there you go. Wrath and Glory by not Fantasy Flight Games. Wrath and Glory, a 40K Warhammer 40K role-playing game.
And the next one?
Okay, so we're going to switch gears here now.
Completely.
So I've been meaning to run this game for a while. And
it's a game that you should probably run in person.
I like that idea. I like running games in person, but COVID has its had, and then the summer and people, all kinds of things worked against it.
That's why he hasn't run it yet, because he hasn't managed to get everybody together in one place.
And that game is called Good Society.
It's a Jane Austen kind of book.
Yes, it's
game.
In this game, it sort of tries to mimic the idea that as you are playing this game, this role-playing game, you are actually writing a Jane Austen novel. If you like Pride and Prejudice, if you like Jane Austen novels and like the whole Regency era, then this is the kind of game that probably you would like. Jolene has been watching Pride and Prejudice for years and years and years, among other Jane Austen type movies and books. It has actually, what do you call it?
Rubbed off on you.
Infested me with the idea of liking this stuff. And I think it's a very interesting era of England or
considering you loved Bridgerton and
right, and then we watched
and Downton
Abbey. So at this point, I've seen quite a lot of stuff, and I was really interested in running this kind of game. And there's absolutely no rule sets except for this one. Now I looked at it, and I'm like, it's very confusing to me because it comes from a very different plan of attack, or however you want to call it, a different angle. And so sometimes certain kinds of books or certain times RPG systems kind of like, I don't get them. I don't grok them very well. And it takes them for me a while to understand. Like, this was pretty light. It's like, oh, that's all there is to this game. And that's all there is to this game. So there's
which baffles his mind.
Which does baffle me. I'm an old dude. I played original D&D back in 1978 and everything else in between. So I'm used to characters with numbers, with attributes and stuff like that, hit points, and this game has none of that.
But it's got all kinds of palace intrigues, so
right?
to speak.
And that's what it's about. And but it's heavily player. What is it? Not player facing. I think player facing is a good word. It's like a lot of the game is run by the players, right? You make up your character, and it has like a goal that they're trying to achieve. Whether they want to marry somebody for money, whether they want to get rid of a problem that some indiscretion that happened in their past, whatever it is, that's their goal. And basically that's all your character is. It's just a person, who they are, what family connections they have a friend, and then it's the goal and how you go about that goal. And there's hardly any rules, which is kind of weird, but it is a role-playing game, and it is doable, and it is possible to play it. I really want to get this one to the table, and I think it does really have to go to the table. I've seen people play it online, like examples of
but you can't have cucumber sandwiches online.
Yes, cucumber sandwiches and tea.
Yes.
Well, you could, but you all can't share the same tea. So I totally understand, and that's why I really want to try to get this to the table face to face, not online. That's been the one reason why it hasn't been played. It was a Kickstarter at one point, and then they came out with an expansion, and then I went in on the Kickstarter, and I was a little bit confused about how that Kickstarter was going to work. and I actually got in contact with because I basically kickstarted the expansion, but not the book, the original book, and I'm like, oh, and
that's because I saw it online, and I'm like, Saul, I want this game, and so then he went down a rabbit hole to get it.
Right, and these guys are in Australia. I mean, these people are in Australia. I think they're written by two women. So I misread the Kickstarter. And I thought I said I want all in, right? But it was all in on the expansions, not any core book. So then when they were like, in Kickstarter there's a backer or like a
question thing,
questionnaire, and I go, oh, and I noticed that there was no core book, and so I wrote to them, and they're like, oh, blah, blah. I just wanted a core book. And then, like, she goes, we were writing back and forth on messages. And she goes, and it was a lady who was in charge. And she said, oh, we could just change the pledge to the core book, blah, blah, blah. And you could just send, like, I think it was like $10 or $12 more than my pledge. I go, okay. And then I go, you know what? How about if you just send me everything you make? Because I already pledged this much. How much more could it be? So that's what I did, and I got all the expansions. I got all this kind of stuff. So I've been really aching to get this game to the table because of all these expansions and pretty cards and nifty stuff. And it's probably been over a year, since this happened. So I don't know, but anyway, it looks like a very exciting game. It plays. You plays like a novel. In fact, in the rules, there is a little bit of it's played in sections, right? And one of the final sections is where you write physical letters to each other, and I think that's pretty neat. I don't know. I'm a sucker for the Regency era now, so I really want to get this to the table.
Okay, and the next one. I'm rushing him because he's got like freaking 20,000 games on here.
I still got plenty of time. I'm not even at 28 minutes. Vossen is a pretty cool game. I think, did we buy it? We did buy the book.
You bought it.
I bought it from, I got a gift card, right, for a local
gaming store,
and I bought it. And Vossen, it's a Nordic horror themed game. It uses...
It's an investigative game.
By Free League, so it is a year zero engine.
And you probably don't want to fight the Vossen because it says you're not going to be able to physically kill them. You have to figure out a magical way to do it.
Oh, you got to figure out their weakness.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, and so it's a very much a thinking person's investigative game with horror elements of this Nordic horror. And I think what makes this game a little bit easier to access than, let's say, Call of Cthulhu. I don't think there is a sanity mechanic.
No, I didn't see a sanity mechanic.
It is because it is.
Well, I guess if you get hit, something bad happens to you.
Yeah, you could die.
Well, no, but Shannon said there was you don't really, I mean, you could die, but there's, you like lose an arm or something. There's like remember he was talking about, it's not so much that you die as something happens to you.
Oh, yeah, you could get like mangled or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it does use a year zero engine like most Free League games. It is really simple. A lot of the game mechanic is simple. The game
mechanic is simple, but rolling a 6 with all those dice isn't simple, people.
We've talked about that before. There are, of course, there's mitigating circumstances. You could push the mechanic and all this stuff. But I think what I really like about it is the simplicity of the year zero engine and the fact that you can change it to suit the genre or the mood that you want to invoke. And I think it's pretty neat that little engine, that little game mechanic is so with like most year zero engine games, it's really easy system. You don't have to explain it too much. It literally take, from somebody who has never played a role-playing game or very little, it'll take you like 10 minutes and they'll have it figured out.
It is literally an investigative game because you're playing investigators.
Yes. You are a group of investigators brought together.
Some of you may be good investigators and some of you may not be good investigators, meaning some of you can talk to people and some of you don't really care about people.
Well, you have other skills.
Yes. So
you have a unique set of skills to get you.
I have a unique set of skills.
So it looks like a really fun game. We've had one session of it. It was really neat. We just haven't been able to get back together.
The one thing I found interesting was that the detective in our group didn't want to talk to anybody.
Who was the detective?
Morgan.
Why didn't he want to talk to anybody?
His character hadn't no people skills, I guess, or no, he didn't care or something about people. It was an interesting thing.
Well, obviously, you can make some interesting characters.
Yeah,
and I think we made our own. I made our own.
I made my own.
Yeah, and some of them made. Oh,
Shannon had made some had given out characters, but since I do this
super easy.
Since I do this podcast with my husband, he's always telling me to get the book out and make a character. So I actually did it. I had questions.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
It wasn't too hard. It had it was pretty cool.
Yeah, like most games like that, most games that use that system, they use archetypes.
Yes, they give you a template, basically.
And basically that's almost a ready-made character.
I don't know about that. You had to put it all together.
You do have to make some decisions, yes. But it's cool. I like it. Just come out with a book of adventures based in Ireland, I think, or something like that. There's a new...
I think it was England instead of... or the UK.
Oh, right, because this is Nordic. And now
yeah.
Right, Britain. Yes, right. You are correct. So anyway, it's an interesting game. Super easy to get into. And a super easy game mechanic.
Yeah.
And all you need is 6-sided dice.
Yeah.
A ton of
Just try to roll a 6 with them and you see how hard it is.
Another one is an old Kickstarter I got a while ago called Flames of Freedom. It is a colonial era, right? Colonial?
Yeah.
Colonial era, or the era of the revolution of
in the United States, yeah.
And they mix in this sort of like this... What is supernatural elements and super spy elements, kind of in a certain sense that the U.S. government knows that there's this supernatural element happening, and they are trying to combat this.
And it's set during the Revolutionary War.
During the Revolution, so it's really neat. It uses the Zweilander game system, and so it's a little crunchy, but I think the game
can be as crunchy as you want it to be if you use the actual rules, or you can do Saul's modified versions, which some of the players didn't like.
That's everybody really can do that. But what I guess it's based on this other game called Colonial Gothic or Colonial something like that, and it's the same writer, but I guess he decided to hook up or to attach the rules that Zweilander uses to put out another edition.
It's very neat, but when you go to make a character, there's so many choices that you just want to think about what you want to do and then just find things that look like that. Okay, I'm just saying. Because I looked at it, there's like 100 things you could choose from.
Yeah, it does give you quite a few options and quite a few characters to choose from.
I'm just saying, archetypes, yeah.
Yeah, so I really like that game. I think it's an interesting era. There's all kinds of interesting things to look at during the Revolutionary period. What if this hadn't happened? What if that didn't happen?
Or more interesting, you walk into a town and people are disappearing, and you got to figure out why, right?
Yeah, and there was this show called Sleepy Hollow that kind of mimics this kind of setting because,
well, in a way, except that Ichabod Crane comes to the future.
Right. It's a modern game, but if they would go back into the future.
They would go back into time.
They would go back in time to look at Ichabod Crane's dealings during the Revolutionary War, and all kinds of weird stuff is happening. So half the story of Sleepy Hollow is very reminiscent of this type of game.
Yes, it's very cool. If you haven't watched the show, and I don't think we ever finished watching it because they changed the day and time that it came on, and
it was probably on Fox Television or something. Because I hate those people. They're the ones that killed Firefly, and I'll never forget that.
Anyway, now Saul said that he was going to do 10 games, and then I'm looking at his list, and his number 10 is like a lot more than one game there.
Well, I lumped all these games together, and I didn't want to go into long descriptions because we probably talked about them quite a bit already. And I just want to say that these are the games that I really want to get to the game table and play a bit more.
Can I say the one that we are currently playing?
Oh,
and I want to, and the boys seem to love it, is Shadowrun. And it's fifth edition. Yes. That's important to know for Shadowrun because it changes the way you play.
There's a 6th edition. So we haven't translated or haven't moved on to 6th edition, mainly because
we have all the 5th edition books.
All the 5th edition books, and that's what we know. And I don't know if there's a lot of changes in 6th edition that would change things.
But if it does change it, you would have to read a lot to figure it out.
I think I'm pretty comfortable with this edition. So, and since I'm running the game, this is the edition I'm sticking with. So, I don't plan on gravitating or moving on to 6th edition. That's all there's to it. So, Shadowrun is a game. I ran a game a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, a month ago.
It had to be a month ago.
And now we're gonna run it next weekend. And we're just starting a new campaign, so that should be an ongoing game. Shadowrun 5th edition.
The boys Augustine actually requested that his dad run it.
Right.
Why won't you run it for us, Dad?
And it was, and that was chorused by everybody else in the mic.
By the other boys, and me going, "Come on, Saul.
What's your problem?" That 540 page rulebook is the problem, but. But basically what I tell them is, look, if you're going to run a character, you got to know the rules for that character. I'm not going to learn the rules for all these different types of characters, because every different type of character has like a complete different subset of rules. Like the mage has a separate set of rules. But now that I've played it quite a bit, a little bit more, I understand it more. I just gotta reacquaint myself with the rules since we hadn't played for a while. Like the whole idea of fade and power and all this other stuff and what you can do. I understand the Technomancer, and I understand the mage. A little bit about weapons, not so much about the one that operates drones and stuff.
And Kathy and I both decided to play badass women this time,
right?
Instead of a technomage and a sorceress.
Yeah, so that's going on. That's definitely going to be played. I don't have to wish for it, but it's something I'm running for my family.
Ooh, Conan I see on your list. I can do that.
So this is number 10, is a bunch of list of games that I just want to play. And we've talked about it ad nauseum, probably some of these, but Conan, Modifius just lost the license. They're going to stop producing games as of like July or June of this.
They're going to stop producing all games?
Conan games.
Oh.
In 2023. I guess they're transferring the license to some other company that's picking up. They basically said, we've done everything that we set out to do. They put out there's got to be 20 books that they put out. So they've done a lot of work. And they basically say, we've done all we can. And their idea was that they were making Conan games and books and supplements that had to deal with his actual writings and nothing they were extrapolating a little bit about his writings, but they just want to deal with his writings, not
by his writings. You mean Robert Howard?
Robert E. Howard. So they were just dealing with his writings and not Sprague de Camp, who also rewrote some of the stories, or Robert Jordan, who did some Conan books, and there's been other authors that have done Conan books and stories, and so they weren't dealing with those stories at all. They were just dealing with the stories that he had written and fragments that he had written, and that was their goal. And they said that that's what they finished.
Felipe, run a game of Conan for me.
Yeah, Feng Shui. It's a super fast, super fun game. We've talked about that pretty much. Black Void. I haven't talked about Black Void very much lately, but it is a kind of like a dark fantasy game. It's really neat. If you ever come across it, and you want something that's not D&D and not very a normal fantasy game, Black Void is really well done. The art in it is beautiful, and he has a few supplements for it. Chivalry and Sorcery, if you want a game that's a little bit more grounded on realistic fantasy setting.
He put quotes around that.
Chivalry and Sorcery has it, but of course they have magic. And there's quite a few supplements.
But you don't have to use the magic, I'm told.
Correct. And they also have a Land of the Rising Sun, which was a supplement to it. If you want to run a Japanese style, samurai style game set in a mythic Japan setting. So check that out. Cyberpunk Red. I never played. I think I played one game of Cyberpunk back in the day, and I'm talking 30 years ago probably, when I still had hair on my head.
You still have hair on your head.
Yeah, so not as much. But a proud mane on my head. I don't remember playing. I don't know what happened, so it doesn't count.
Anyway.
So Cyberpunk Red is the newest incarnation of Cyberpunk. It just came out maybe last year or the year before. Cyberpunk, if you ever heard of Cyberpunk, you know what it is. There you go. I want to try it out. The Expanse RPG, I love The Expanse. We've been watching The Expanse on TV. We never watched it before. We've almost not finished it, but we're getting close. I read quite a few of the books. I think I read up to 4 or 5 books, and it's a great setting. It's really cool.
And I suggest if you haven't watched the show, you should watch it because it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a pretty good show. Another area of role-playing I want to get into is steampunk. So Victoriana is a steampunk RPG. I think it's still published by Cubicle 7. I'm not sure. But anyway, it is a really cool game system.
That's the one where we played where we were on the Zeppelin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one on the train. Remember there was a train? We got off the train and there was a big old fight.
Yeah. That was
done by Felipe.
That was an excellent game.
Yeah, that's a good game, and I have a lot of books for it, and I have a lot of adventures for it. So I really
and steampunk is cool. I mean, Zeppelins. I mean, come on.
Weird and clockwork stuff. Yeah. So really fun setting. I've enjoyed it. I've read quite a few Clockwork steamwork stuff books, and I really thoroughly enjoyed them. And it's a really interesting genre, a really interesting era of to play in.
So these are some of the games that Saul thinks.
Oh, also I want to play Star Wars.
Oh, he still haven't.
Star Wars.
Did your list?
It's right there. It's right there. It's right, plain as day.
I thought it was at the bottom of his list, but I see more.
I had to add on. So Star Wars, I would literally play any Star Wars game, whether it's D6, which is an old classic game by the same people who made Paranoia. I don't remember. I forgot the name of it. But anyway, they came out with the 30th anniversary edition of their game. It comes in a slip case box with 2 books, or you can find the old rules out there anywhere. There's also FFG Star Wars, which I believe is now out of print, but you can find those books here and there. I have 2 of the books. I have Edge of the Empire, which I think would be my favorite one to play in. I really like the game. I like the way you make a character. The funky dice system, I'm not really a super fan of it, but it's Star Wars. I
find that interesting because for the One Ring, you like the funky dice.
There's not that many funky dice. There's no funky dice in Lord of the Rings.
Then why do we have all these sets of dice for Lord of the Rings or the One Ring?
There is the idea that there's a 12-sider that isn't 12 sides. There is 12 sides. It's 1 through 10, and then there's a
Sauron and a Gandalf.
And a Gandalf icon, and that's good or bad, right? That's like really good or really bad. So,
but you don't consider that funky dice.
No, I don't consider that funky dice. Like when
I've seen the Star Wars dice that you have, and they look the same, right?
No, they have symbols on them.
Symbols. It's like fudge dice.
Fudge dice are just numbers, like pluses or minuses. No, funky, like they have symbols on them, and some of them have more than one symbol. Like some have like little starbursts, and one have 2 starbursts, and the other have.
So you just need a chart.
Well, you could use a chart, or there's an app.
We're not liking those dice. I've seen like 5 or 6 sets of them around the house.
Set because I really wanted to play that game, and I got into the game with Mike Eckert.
Yeah.
But he was too far away. He lives too far away for me to go every whatever week. And I liked his game, but it was just too far away for me to go all the time. Star Wars, I really want to play it more than rent it, but there it is. I really want to.
So if you listen to this podcast and have heard all the games Saul wants to play in 2023, let us know what games you want to play in 2023.
Yeah, or let us know anything you want us to talk about.
About gaming.
Oh, well, yeah, it has to deal with games, yeah. Since this is a gaming podcast. RPGs or even board games. We haven't talked about board games in a long time, but we still play board games.
But we could talk about board games ad nauseum if you really want us to.
Yeah, so everybody have a happy holidays.
And a happy new year, because I don't know when Saul's going to publish this.
I'll publish it this week.
So there you go. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
And you have a good day.